Heusinkveld have announced a new wireless wheel rim, and it's caused a little bit of confusion in the sim racing space, with comments on Reddit such as, "It looks like a kid's toy, not a racing wheel." Interesting. I hate it, but I really like how there's so many buttons near your thumb. It looks worse than an Acer Tech. That's a double burn. In this video, I'm going to tell you what I think of this wheel rim, why I actually think this is great for sim racing, and why I would like to see more crazy Dutch products on the market. Subscribe so you can unsubscribe when you don't like my wheel rim opinion. Click the like button if you're fed up of every single sim racing wheel looking exactly the same and effectively being another Formula or GT3 wheel rim. And as always, thank you so much to channel members, supporters and donors. Without you, we wouldn't be here. So, the world is worse, and it's your fault. So, Heusinkveld's new wheel rim has been shown off, and I actually think it's absolutely fantastic. Mostly because I'm completely fed up of seeing the same stuff in sim racing constantly. How many GT3 wheel rims do we need? How many F1 car wheel rims do we need? And how many replica wheel rims do we need? And, you know, it's like sim racers generally are the most unimaginative and dull people on earth, which is why GT3 is so popular. I'm not going to stop hating on GT3, guys. We keep getting comments going, "Oh, why do you always hate on GT3?" Because it's terrible in sim racing. So I really like that Heusinkveld are doing something different with this wheel rim. Also, I really like that this wheel rim looks kind of both retro and future at the same time. It genuinely is, if I'm going to side with the critical comments, it genuinely is quite a confusing, visually confusing product to look at. It looks both expensive and cheap at the same time, and as I say, sort of retro and future at the same time, which is, it's a confusing vibe to be getting. It makes sense that it's Dutch though, like you're both dry and underwater at the same time. So you know, if it was going to come from anyone, that coming from Heusinkveld makes the most amount of sense. What I think is giving that retro vibe is the blue buttons, and some of the blue on the rotary encoders is very reminiscent of that 90s Sega kind of Sonic the Hedgehog Sega blue colour that you'll have seen in the 90s a lot. So I think that's what's giving that feel. And then also, because you can see it's very engineered around ergonomics primarily over pure visual aesthetics, that was also quite an emphasis with a lot of earlier game controllers, where there was a lot more experimentation with trying to make more ergonomic game controllers before companies went down sort of rigid paths or trying to just accommodate everybody with a somewhat generic gamepad. If you look at game controllers through the years, you'll see that there was a lot more variation, a lot more interesting design, a lot more sort of harsher, potentially more ergonomic for certain people, but less ergonomic for other people types of controller design. Everything just looks like a blob now, which is really boring and a bit sad. So I'd love to actually see this, an interesting, different controller. Also really notable, and what makes it look different as well, is the button arrangement above the thumbs, which is much more reminiscent of what you'd expect from a aeroplane yoke rather than a steering wheel. And I think it's going to be really interesting to see how those buttons actually are to use whilst you're driving. And you can see the idea of the wheel is that you don't necessarily have to start taking your hands off to actually access and use things on the wheel. Though you probably will have to take a hand off one side to use a rotary encoder, unless you've got like mega dexterity in your thumbs. Who knows? We'll have to try it. But I really like that different arrangement. Maybe even if you're someone that's playing in VR, having the buttons arranged like that might make it easier to remember and access buttons without having to search for buttons. It does take a while if you're using a new wheel rim to sort of build up that proprioception, or the subconscious knowledge of where things are positioned on a controller, especially when you're wearing a VR headset and you can't see stuff, to have it that you're like, well, if I move my thumb a little bit to the right, that's the next button, and then up and to the right is the next button. That might actually help people in VR. Function wise as well, the wheel rim, and this is a crucial thing that is something I don't see mentioned enough with wheel rims. We mentioned it with our last video where we were talking about the budget wheel rims, the KS and the Fanatec McLaren wheel rim. It's going to be a really light wheel rim. I think it's like a kilogram total weight, and I imagine that weight's probably been mostly on the where the quick release is rather than the edges of the wheel. And I don't think it's mentioned enough, but a lighter wheel rim is going to be a more responsive wheel rim. It's one of the reasons why I love the cheapo KS wheel from Mozart and, I say, the Fanatec McLaren wheel rim. If it's lighter, it has a lower moment of inertia. It has less inertia. It will want to move quicker, and you will feel the details from your wheelbase more. So sure, if you've got a heavy wheel rim and you've got a really strong wheelbase, it might not matter, and some people might like the actual feel that you get from a heavier wheel rim, because it does give a slightly different feel. These are all like marginal things that really don't matter on the grand scheme of things, to be honest, in most cases. But having it be a light wheel rim means that you can change how your wheel feels through the software rather than it being locked in through the wheel rim, which is absolutely fantastic. And given that this wheel rim is, I think, 600 euros is the price they're going for, it's not the most crazy expensive of custom wheel rims, so it's quite likely that people might want to be using it on lower strength direct drive wheelbases. So again, a lighter wheel rim just means it's going to work with those wheelbases a lot better. And finally, of the major, most noticeable things I could see from just images of this wheel rim, the actual grip shape that you've got there, which I think lends to it looking how it does, which maybe is putting some people off, maybe not other people, but the grip shape, you can really see that it should have a really nice kind of feel to it. And crucially, the thumb, where your thumbs can go into the wheel, there's a lot of range and quite a bit of space there. And this is probably something that you might not be aware of if you've not used GT3 rims or smaller Formula rims, but when you're playing with stronger force feedback and you've got those smaller wheel rims with all the buttons on them all like cramped in together, it's super easy to get your thumbs caught in the holes when you have a bit of snap oversteer, you're doing something more aggressive. Having the holes where your thumb go be a little bit bigger and also curved off how it is means that you're a lot less likely to get probably the most common type of injury that you get sim racing. I have knackered my thumb and my thumbnail up, especially on my right hand for some reason. I don't know why it's always this right thumb, but I've almost dislocated my thumb multiple times. You've seen it on live streams, purely from getting my finger stuck in that hole whilst doing rotations. And again, the Dutch are obviously very familiar with sticking their fingers in dikes to stop the country from flooding. So maybe that's where that design came from. That's on the edge, that one. Yeah, I'm really interested to see how it goes. It's obviously wireless. It doesn't have a screen on it. It looks like it has a screen on it, but it doesn't. I think that's a little bit of a shame. I quite like having my teapot in the middle of my wheel glowing, but they've gone for it being wireless, and they've gone for battery life being a priority and not having to think about that kind of stuff. It is mega utilitarian design with this wheel rim, and I like that. I really like that it's utilitarianism around sim racing. It's not utilitarianism around a real race car. It's around sim racing. Heusinkveld have thought, right, what is the most utilitarian type of wheel rim that's a GT3 Formula style rim for sim racing? What we need more of this. It's like what I always say about Marvin's force feedback app. It might not be realistic force feedback, but it lets you get the most detail out of iRacing's force feedback. AC1, you know, the force feedback lets you feel what's going on. With Sims, giving the options, it lets you get the most out of it. We're not in sim racing. We are not held back by aspects of reality in the same way as you are in a real car. I get it. Some people want to do role playing. That's fine. I'm not against having stuff like that. But I really like this kind of utilitarian exploration. So yeah, I am actually positive, quite surprisingly positive for this. I want to see more of this kind of craziness in sim racing. the war against dull is really needed in sim race at the moment, and Heusinkveld, in my view, have dropped a bombshell. Let me know in the comments what you think of this wheel rim. I'd be interested actually with our community. It's not really a community here, is it? It's more like a regime. But I'd be interested to know what the Game of Muscle regime thinks of this wheel rim. But until the next one, fish, teapot fish, happy tea drinking, take care, and goodbye.